Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. The day I overheard Margaret whisper, "She's too unstable to care for them properly," was the day I realized I was sleeping under the roof of a woman who wanted my children more than she ever wanted me safe. She was pouring me chamomile tea when she said it, soft and low over the phone, door cracked just an inch in her study. I hadn't meant to hear. I was on my way to take the laundry out, socks balled against my hip, still damp from the cycle. I froze in the hallway. "She's delicate," she said, with that syrupy tone she used when speaking to the church ladies. "All over the place since the divorce. I've been documenting things. Brad is ready to talk to the lawyer." The socks slid from my arms onto the floor. 3 weeks earlier, I had nowhere to go but her front porch. I'm 47 years old, and I was standing outside my ex-mother-in-law's colonial with my suitcase handle biting into my palm. My marriage to Brad ended in a hurricane of accusations, cold shoulders, and the kind of silence that rots everything from the inside out. He got the condo, the car, and our dog, Charlie. I got joint custody and a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex where the windows didn't shut properly, until I couldn't even afford that. The divorce bled me dry. Court fees, therapy bills, missed shifts at work. I'd taken every hit trying to keep things calm for the kids. Hannah is 9. Milo just turned 7. They're the only thing that kept me from unraveling completely. I was a substitute teacher before the pandemic. After that, I pieced together childcare gigs, evening shifts at a cafe, and occasional temp work. Nothing stuck. I never blamed anyone for that. Until now. When Margaret opened her front door that day, she smiled like I was her own daughter. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a lavender-smelling hug. "You'll always have a home here, no matter what happened between you and Brad." I believed her. God help me, I did. She gave me the guest room, the one with the pale blue bedspread and the photo of Brad graduating college on the dresser. The walls smelled like old perfume and lemon oil. It wasn't mine, but it was warm. And when I called Hannah and Milo to say goodnight each evening, it almost felt like I could exhale. Margaret brought me tea most nights. She'd knock softly, her silver hair pinned back, her voice motherly. "You need to take care of yourself, dear. Can't pour from an empty cup." I didn't see the knife behind the kindness. I noticed things before I admitted I did. Little things. The way she asked about my schedule, noting it in a little spiral notebook on the kitchen counter. "Just to keep track of when you're out," she'd say cheerfully. She always seemed to know if I was late getting home, if I left a dish in the sink, if I sounded tired on the phone with the kids. One night she mentioned something odd. "Hannah said you forgot her recital date. You're just so forgetful lately." I hadn't forgotten. I'd marked it down, planned for it. I corrected her, gently, and she smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes. The next day, Brad called me furious. "You're not showing up for the kids. That recital meant something to Hannah." I had no idea how he knew, unless someone told him I'd forgotten. But I hadn't. I hadn't. I started writing everything down, my own log. Dates, times, moods, just in case. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. I couldn't believe that the woman who had hugged me while I cried the night Brad moved out would go behind my back. Not after everything. Then I heard her on the phone. She was speaking to someone. I know now it was Brad. And her voice was low, soothing. "No, she hasn't worked in weeks. I think she naps a lot during the day. She's fragile." My hand shook so hard, the laundry basket nearly dropped. She cries in the shower, she added. I don't think the children are safe with her like this. I can help you, Brad. We'll get them full time. I backed away before I heard more. My pulse was deafening. I walked back to the guest room, shut the door, and sat on the bed. My lungs were fluttering like paper. They were building a case, and I was sleeping inside it. I started noticing more. Her laptop left open, showing emails to Brad marked evidence, snapshots of my dishes undone, notes about the time I'd taken an expired painkiller for a migraine, a photo of me asleep on the couch, captioned, "Unwell again." The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, soft-pedaled, domestic. The betrayal of someone who offers you honey while gutting your world with a paring knife. I had nowhere to go. My cousin in Denver had a newborn. My old roommate had moved in with her boyfriend. I didn't have the money to rent anything else, and Brad knew that. I was staying in this house as a temporary solution until I could land something steady. I was just trying to be close to my children. And this woman was handing me tea with one hand and stealing them from me with the other. The worst part? I had thanked her. Thank you, Margaret. I don't know what I'd do without you. The night after I overheard her phone call, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan in the guest room, counting rotations. My heart was full of pins. Every memory of her kindness now felt infected. I replayed them, turning each moment over in my mind like a piece of silver gone tarnished. The next morning, I called Brad. "We need to talk," I said calmly. He paused. "About what?" "I know about the custody meeting. I know what your mother is doing." Silence. "I'm not unstable," I added. "I'm heartbroken. I'm tired. But I'm not unfit." "She's just worried." "No," I interrupted. "She wants control. That's all." He didn't deny it, and that told me everything. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but there was a strange clarity washing over me, too. If they were documenting me, it was time I started documenting them. I was done drinking the poison disguised as tea. I started wearing earbuds around the house, not with anything playing. Just enough to pretend I wasn't listening, so they'd speak freely around me. Margaret had a habit of humming when she thought no one was around. That week, she hummed Ave Maria and opened drawers she thought I couldn't hear. In the mornings, she lingered by my guest room door before heading to the kitchen. Once, I caught her gently testing the doorknob. I began locking it when I slept. I knew it would be dangerous to confront her directly. She was too smart, too polished. She'd cry if I accused her. She'd say I was paranoid. She'd say I was having another episode. Because that's what she was painting me as, wasn't it? Not a mother rebuilding her life. A fragile woman, one bad day away from unfit. I started noticing her talking more to the kids on the phone. "How's Mommy been lately?" I heard her ask Milo through the cracked study door. "Does she ever seem confused?" It was brilliant, in a sick way. She wasn't just playing informant. She was planting doubt. And it was working. Hannah didn't hug me the last time I saw her. She stood stiffly on the sidewalk outside school, eyes flicking toward her father's car. Brad waited with the engine idling, arms crossed. It was my afternoon, but he had shown up anyway, just to make sure everything was on time. As if I ever forgot my children. "Hi, baby," I said, crouching. "How was your spelling test?" She shrugged. "Dad says you sleep all day now." I froze. "No, sweetie. I work. You know that." She looked up, uncertain. "Grandma says you cry at dinner." I swallowed a sob and hugged her before she could resist again. Her arms stayed limp. The drive home felt like moving through wet cement. Margaret made stew that night. She always made something soft and maternal on the days Brad had the kids, like it made her more nurturing, like it covered the rot with rosemary. I pushed the food around my bowl. She watched me from across the table. "You look tired," she said with a sympathetic frown. "Are you getting enough rest?" "Plenty," I replied, not looking up. "I worry, you know. I know this is a difficult time for you." I met her eyes then. "You've been very thorough about your concern." Her spoon paused mid-air. "You've spoken to Brad. You're taking notes. I know about the lawyer." She smiled, actually smiled. "Brad's the children's father. Of course I'm involved." "That doesn't give you the right to spy on me." She dabbed her mouth with a cloth napkin. "Oh, sweetheart, you're staying under my roof. I have every right to observe what happens here. And frankly," she sighed, "it's not looking good for you." There it was. The mask slipped. The part that killed me most was how calm she was, how professional almost, like I wasn't a person, just a liability. She stood up to clear the dishes. "I do hope you find somewhere else soon, for your own dignity." My dignity? She said that as if she hadn't been slowly stealing it in teaspoons. The next day, I called legal aid. It took hours to get through. I told them what was happening, about the surveillance, the manipulation. The woman on the line listened quietly, then said gently, "Document everything, every encounter, every conversation. Keep your own record." "I have been," I said. "I just don't know how much longer I can stay." "You'll have to outlast them just long enough to make your move," she said. "Don't let them provoke you. That's what they want, to catch you breaking down." I thanked her. It was the first time someone had believed me in weeks. I started gathering receipts, photos of my meals, grocery runs, medication schedule, texts with the kids. I took screenshots of Margaret's emails when she left her laptop open. I emailed everything to myself, so there was a backup not tied to the house Wi-Fi. One night she asked me to join her for a glass of wine. I accepted. I played along. She poured, carefully. Chardonnay, cold, with just a sliver of peach at the rim, her signature touch. She sipped first. "I hope we can stay civil through this, for the children." "Of course," I said, smiling tightly. "We all want what's best." "You're not the first to lose everything in a divorce," she added casually. "I haven't lost everything," I said. "Not yet." She tilted her head. "Still fighting?" "Not fighting, just remembering who I am." Her eyes narrowed. She knew then. I wasn't going to beg anymore. I wasn't the broken woman on her guest bed. I was watching now, listening, waiting. At night, I wrote in a little red notebook and tucked it into the lining of my suitcase. I wrote down how many pills were in the bottle, what I ate, how many hours I worked, even how often I called the kids. Every time she knocked on my door, every loaded comment, it all went in. One afternoon, I caught her taking photos of my bedroom. "Just redecorating ideas," she said sweetly. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Brad emailed me a few days later. "We need to reassess the custody arrangement. My mum thinks the kids are being negatively affected by your emotional volatility. I've already scheduled a mediation." I laughed. I actually laughed when I read it, because now I had proof. Proof of collusion. Proof of a setup. They had underestimated me. Again. Margaret brought up rent the next morning, not because she needed it, but as another power play. "You've been here nearly a month, dear. I think a contribution is fair." I looked her dead in the eye. "Absolutely. I'll send you a check. And I'll include a copy of the one I gave to my attorney. She blinked. I smiled. They're very interested in your observations. For the first time in weeks, she said nothing. Her silence was the first crack in her porcelain armor. I was getting closer, and I wasn't going anywhere. I met Nora by accident. She was the barista at the corner cafe where I sometimes escaped for a few hours to apply for jobs and breathe. The first time I went in, she complimented my earrings. The second time, she remembered my name. The third time, she leaned across the counter and said softly, "You okay, hun? You look like someone's ghost." I blinked. "Excuse me." She smiled, not unkindly. "You've been coming in here like you're running from something invisible." I stared at her. This stranger with faded tattoos and weary eyes. And something inside me cracked open. We talked for hours that day, tucked in the corner booth with her on break and me nursing an old laptop and cold coffee. I didn't tell her everything, not yet, but I said enough. That I was a mother going through hell. That I was staying somewhere I didn't trust. That people were trying to paint me as something I wasn't. She didn't flinch. "Honey," she said, "do you know how many women I've seen get gaslit out of their own kids? You'd be amazed how polite betrayal can sound when it comes with tea and a forced smile." It wasn't long before I started using the cafe as my office. Nora saved me the seat by the window. She slipped me extra muffins when she could. One day, she handed me a business card folded inside a napkin. Family law. She helped my sister get custody back from a man who kept a clean shirt and a crooked heart. The lawyer's name was Erin Velez. I called her the same night. "Margaret is playing the long game," Erin said after our first meeting. "Passive manipulation, document trails, credibility poisoning. These women rarely get caught because they operate just inside the margins of civility. But you've been smart." I showed her my logs, the screenshots, the photo Margaret took of my guest room, the email from Brad that practically sang conspiracy. Erin smiled like someone who'd seen worse and knew exactly where to aim. "You don't need to win a war," she said. "You just need to prove there is one." Brad and I met in mediation the next week. He wore the navy blazer he always put on for court. I wore a borrowed blouse and the knowledge of what I knew they didn't expect, that I was ready. The mediator opened with formalities. Erin sat beside me, quiet and firm. Brad started with concern. He said I seemed exhausted, that the children had expressed confusion, that his mother, as a stable and objective observer, had noted alarming behaviors. I sat still. I let him finish. Then Erin slid a folder across the table. Inside, a printed email from Margaret to Brad titled "Building Our Case," followed by photos of me doing dishes, me asleep on the couch, me folding laundry, followed by my log. Every unfair accusation with a date, time, and contradiction. Brad's jaw tightened. The mediator's eyebrows rose. "Do you know what this looks like?" Erin said calmly. "A coordinated campaign to discredit a mother during a custody review. That's not just unethical, it's manipulative." "I was just—" Brad started, but Erin cut him off. "Observing, or building a case. There's a difference." He had no answer, and for once, neither did Margaret, because she wasn't in the room. That night, I returned to the house and found Margaret in the kitchen stirring soup. "You look pale," she said without turning. "I met with a lawyer," I replied. She froze for just a moment, a flick of the wrist, a pause too tight to be casual. Then, "Oh? About what?" "I think you know." She finally turned. Her face was neutral, but her eyes weren't. Her mask had slipped before, but now it cracked. You're acting like I'm the enemy, she said. I'm acting like someone who finally stopped thanking the thief. She laughed, short, bitter. You'll never win, you know. Judges listen to people like me. Calm, organized. Not women who cry in the shower and make lists no one reads. I don't need to win, I said. I just need to show the truth. Her lips curled, the way they used to when Hannah spilled juice on her carpet. And what is your truth exactly? That love isn't performance, and control isn't care. She looked me over like I was furniture she regretted buying. You should leave, she said. Tomorrow. I nodded. I will. But not before I left copies of every document in a manila envelope on her dresser. Let her know that I could play polite, too. Nora offered me her pull-out couch that night. It was cramped, and her cat shed on everything, and her smoke alarm chirped every time she baked. But I'd never felt more free. You did it, she said, as we sat on the floor with tea and cookies. You got out before she bled you dry. Barely, I replied. I still have to go to court. But now you go with a spine. I exhaled. I hadn't realized until that moment that I had been holding my breath for weeks, maybe longer. The courtroom didn't smell like justice. It smelled like bleach and cold metal and a stale vending machine. But I walked in with my head high and a folder under my arm, filled with everything I had once thought no one would believe. Erin stood beside me like a lighthouse. Not flashy, just solid. Brad arrived late. Margaret did not show, which said more than if she had. The judge was a sharp woman in her 60s with salt and pepper hair and a gaze that cut like scissors. She'd seen it all, I could tell. She didn't do flattery, and she didn't do drama. I liked her instantly. Brad began with the usual concerns, suggestions, second-hand anecdotes. Then Erin stood, firm as iron. Your Honour, we're submitting evidence of an orchestrated narrative against my client, conducted by the petitioner and his mother, designed to discredit without cause. She passed the documents to the clerk. All of it. The emails, the photos, the logs. The judge skimmed quickly, then looked over her glasses at Brad. Your mother took surveillance-style photos of your ex-wife inside her home. Brad shifted. She was worried. She was building a case, I said, my voice steady, against the mother of her grandchildren, while I was grieving the end of a 15-year marriage. The judge looked at me. I let her see all of it. The tiredness, the restraint, the quiet will that had carried me here. She nodded once, slowly. I've seen enough. Joint custody remained in place. No restrictions, no modifications. But what mattered most wasn't the ruling. It was the look on Brad's face when the judge said, "This court takes allegations of manipulation very seriously, especially when they originate outside of legal guardianship." It was the unspoken, "Your mother doesn't run this courtroom." I walked out feeling 10 pounds lighter, no confetti, no victory music, just my dignity intact, which felt revolutionary. Margaret sent a text later that week. I only ever wanted what was best for the children. I hope someday you'll understand that. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Let her sit in her curated silence, stewing in the absence of control. Let her watch my silence stretch out longer than any of her carefully worded manipulations. Some things don't need an answer. Some things are answers in themselves. I stayed with Nora for a month. I got a part-time position at the elementary school as a reading specialist. The principal, a kind woman with a firm handshake, said my references were excellent. I had Nora to thank for that. She wrote one herself. She's got more sense than most of the people I know, and more fight than she lets on. Hannah and Milo came to my little apartment every weekend. We baked cookies, played board games, watched movies. No lavish distractions, just presence. One night, Hannah curled up beside me on the couch and said, "Grandma said you wouldn't last on your own." I looked down at her and smiled. "Did she?" "She said you were too sad." I kissed her forehead. "Sad doesn't mean weak." She nodded, as if that made sense to her in a way only children understand. Milo chimed in, mouth full of popcorn. "You're not sad now." "No," I said. "I'm not." A week later, I received a letter from a family court liaison. Apparently, an anonymous report had been made, again, questioning my stability. But this time, it didn't shake me. Because this time, I had a paper trail. A lawyer, a job, a witness. A support system that didn't come with strings disguised as gratitude. I filed a formal response. Attached every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Referenced the court's previous ruling. Noted that the anonymous source had no legal standing. The report was dismissed the next day. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was knowing that Margaret had tried, one more time, and it didn't work. She threw her last match and expected the house to burn, but I was already standing in the garden. My revenge wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. I simply outlived her performance. I documented her tactics. I showed up with facts instead of fear. I smiled at the judge while Margaret sat invisible behind Brad's name. And now I live without owing her anything. No gratitude, no updates, no access, not to me, and not to my children. 6 months later, I planted tomatoes. Not because I needed them, really. The store was 2 blocks away. But because I wanted something that would grow only if I tended to it. No one else. Just me. I live in a small 2-bedroom now, with a patch of sun-soaked yard and thin walls that hum when the neighbours play jazz. It's not much, but it's mine. The lease is in my name. The keys jingle when I come home late from the school. I hang the kids' art on the fridge, not just during their visits, but all the time. They run through the front door on weekends with backpacks and updates and inside jokes that only make sense if you've sat in the back seat of an SUV with a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old for an hour. We eat pancakes in pajamas. We sing loudly and badly in the kitchen. We live. And I'm not performing for anyone anymore. Not for Margaret. Not for Brad. Not for the world. Just for us. I see Margaret sometimes. At school concerts. Birthday parties, pickups and drop-offs. She sits in the second row with her pearls and posture and smiles like nothing ever happened. I nod politely. She never approaches. She knows now that I'm not someone she can file away, that I'm not her project. And maybe, just maybe, she knows that the more she tried to erase me, the more solid I became. My absence in her world became my power in mine. Brad and I are civil. We exchange necessary updates. He no longer suggests changes to the custody schedule. He no longer quotes Margaret during our conversations. He knows it would get him nowhere. And I think, in his own way, he knows he failed the kids once already by letting someone else try to replace their mother with a cleaner narrative. Now, he just parents. And I parent. Separately. But equally. Last month, I started taking a writing class. It meets Tuesday nights at the library. Our instructor is a retired journalist with too many pens in her coat pocket. She read one of my short stories and said, "You write like someone who survived a shipwreck." I smiled. Close enough. She nodded and said, "The survivors always write the best endings. This is mine. Not a dramatic showdown. Not a courtroom scream fest. Not revenge as spectacle. Just a woman who walked out of a beautiful house full of lies and built a smaller one full of truth. A woman who cried in the shower but didn't let them use her tears as ammunition. A woman who stayed quiet long enough to be heard. I still make tea at night. Chamomile, mostly, with a little honey. I drink it by the window and listen to the streetlights buzz. I think of who I was when I knocked on Margaret's door all those months ago. Broken, uncertain, grateful for scraps. I'm not her anymore. Now, I drink tea without bracing for betrayal. Now, my children come home to me without suspicion in their eyes. Now, I cry only when I want to. And I plant things in soil that belongs to me, things that grow,